This is Common Sense Generation. Common Sense Generation. Hi everyone, this is Common Sense Generation. I'm Maria Kądzielska-Koper, and today we will talk about Russia and Alexei Navalny. And I have with me in the studio an absolute expert in this field, Łukasz Jasina, an expert of the East, about the films and what the public knows you from, that you fact that you were a former spokesperson to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Poland. So we spoke a lot, and we spoke to many outside our country, which is of course a wonderful role. But you have a great background when it comes to it, because you know a lot about the Eastern foreign affairs, and you know a lot about the movies and the films. And this is a funny thing, because we are dealing right now with the topic of Alexei Navalny, and the most important Russian oppositionist of recent years. And there are two things connected to him. First of all, the fact that he was murdered recently or died in the prison. And secondly, that a movie about him in 2022 won an Oscar, and it was a really good movie. So films connected to politics. This is something I think which is even more often, and this is something which you represent as well. Łukasz, first of all, tell us also just a few things about yourself, because, the last time I had the pleasure to talk with you, you already...
3 years ago.
You were about to become the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and now you're not.
It was pandemic time, and our interviews 3 years ago were recorded via Skype or something, and we are much different 3 years ago, but we're smiling as today. Firstly, thank you very much for the invitation here. It's very nice to be one of the first guests of your podcast.
Well, it's a pleasure that I have such a wonderful guest here with me, with the Hirnolos. I'm very happy that we have this format to talk.
And thank you very much for giving me opportunity to talk about not only the politics, but also about all those things where some completely opposite things have something in common. And the culture and the politics has a lot in common, but people usually don't care as much about this as they should. And Alexei Navalny, late Alexei Navalny, you describe this with truth. Even if he wasn't murdered the classical way, he was murdered through 3 years of being in very hard and harsh Russian prison. All kinds of his death were result of the bad and ugly Vladimir Putin's politics. Now he's dead. He became a symbol. But now and before his death, he was a symbol already. Alexei Navalny was not only a politician or the most popular leader of the Russian opposition. Sometimes there was no opposition and he was a leader. But he was also a man who knew how to work with the traditional and new medias, especially with the social ones. And he became an icon of pop culture. That's why he was so dangerous.
He was a YouTuber, so he was doing what we are doing right now.
Because in Russia, the clash of the traditional media was quicker. There was no freedom in them at all. And the only way in reaching people's minds or people's thinking was to find them through new social medias, YouTube and some other stuff which is relatively unknown in Poland. For example, channels like Telegram and others. And Alexei Navalny knew how to do this because it was the only legal way sometimes to publish something on dictators, corruption, oligarchs. You know, YouTube maybe is founded by Jewish Russian immigrants. But technically is something owned on American law by the American citizens. And that is why it wasn't very easy to close it down like many other institutions, media outlets, relatively persecuted by the Russian government. But let's start about Alexei Navalny from the beginning.
So I have actually checked. So he was born on the 4th of July, 1976 in...
4 years older than me, old chap. And the man who was 15 when the Soviet Union was crushed.
Exactly. And he was a lawyer. And this is an important thing, that fact that he actually also had... he was practicing law at the beginning of his career.
It is helpful. I'm a law graduate myself. I didn't practice it, except the way we all practice law.
Being a citizen.
Yes, but it is very helpful, especially for the way you organize your mind. You know how to lead. You know that there is law in the country, that there are rules. But you mentioned his date of birth. You know, he was 15 when the Soviet Union was crushed. He's 24 years younger than Vladimir Putin. That's very important. That's a difference of the generation. Putin was in the middle of his age when the Soviet Union was destroyed. Navalny was young. For him, Soviet Union was not a myth, was not a state he wants to be back, but his state was a Russia. And also, you mentioned he was a lawyer. He was not from the family of the oppositionists. He was not from the family of the enemies of Putin. He was one of those young people who were relatively positively treated in the beginning of the presidency of the present Russian dictator, because at the beginning, of course, Chechenians were enemies. Anna Politkovska was killed. Many other people were treated badly. But Russia was open for unpolitical young people from the generation born in the half of the 70s. Russia was open for them as long as they were supporting regime. And Navalny wasn't rebellious in the first 35 years of his life. He was making money. He was establishing his position as a lawyer. And he was becoming more and more popular. And also, information from all those who wants to idealize Alexei Navalny like one of those classical heroes. You know, not only in Poland, world must be sometimes dark and white, black and white. But Alexei Navalny wasn't one of those who were always supporting good. He was not always supporting good causes. He was a Russian citizen, and we have to remember that when there was attack on Georgia in 2008, and later when the Crimea was annexed,
he was
supporting this because he was a politician, and politician is doing what people from the country wants him to do.
And he was, of course, a nationalist, especially at the beginning. So
we have no idea. Is it a good word for a Russian nationality? Maybe imperialism is better, but
yes, but believing in believing in Russian, big Russia.
Yeah, that's the problem of the Russian patriots. They are becoming very often imperialist, and it's very difficult to talk with them about this.
Exactly. So there was this thought that actually Russia should be bigger as a good state who is organizing things. That the Crimea belongs to Russia. That it is there is a order of Russian civilization which should be extended over its borders. So that was definitely...
Potentially Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin was an intelligent man. He is, but not all the time. He could annihilate Navalny. He could make him a part of his apparatus, find a new successor in him. But he was never able to find out that this is a very good way for him to finding out Navalny from the potential opposition circles. But yes, we mentioned the problems.
So Navalny was doing very interesting things. So I don't know. My question is he needed to have this urge to actually fight something what he disliked. So he was buying those shares of public companies and expecting, and that's why he had a possibility to go through the documents and search for corruptions. And he was exposing this corruption in the state companies. And this is something which, at least for me, is very wonderful about him, but it requires a lot of courage, but also energy just to do it. The force.
Navalny, until he became a sick and destroyed person in the prison, was a very energetic man and a brave one. But Vladimir Putin became a president of Russia because of two myths. First, a myth of the strong man, and the second of the man who fights with the oligarchs and the corruption. And
so Russians want to fight with corruption.
Yes, because that's a very, very big and strong part, an immanent part of the Russian myth. A good Tsar who fights with the corruption. For the people. When in Russia there was a very tradition when you were treated badly by the nobleman or someone important, you always had the possibility to go to Peter I, Catherine II, Lenin, Stalin, and Brezhnev and tell them to correct the mistake of the systems. And at the beginning of his presidency, Putin was playing a person like that he's correcting.
So he was a good father.
He was a good father. A man who fought with the corruption, man who lived a simple life in a simple residence, eats healthy food, and is strong and muscular.
Yeah, do sports. This is the part of...
Of course, it was changing because now he's 72. He's no more muscular. He's misogynist, living in seclusion. And when he was growing old, the young man was coming. Alexei Navalny, 4 years younger than Putin himself, exposing that there are no myths. Those myths are not truth. Putin is the same element of the Russian oligarchy and corruption. Only people were changed. And probably that is why, because of his youth, because of his energy, good look, and exposing of the Putin myths, he was hated by the Putin personally. But try to imagine yourself how strong were Putin's nerves that he was accepting Navalny for many, many years and letting him live in Russia and not trying to destroy his as a person.
Exactly, because he was doing well. He tried to get into the arrest in 2011 for the first time.
It was the moment there was so much in the history from that time, and 2011 was a moment of the first big demonstration revolts of the Russian streets after the falsification of the Duma's election. It was just because returning of Putin to the power, official returning Putin to the presidency. It was the end of the so-called Medvedev liberalization. And nobody thought in 2011 that Navalny will be a so strong opponent of Putin in the future. I think it's all known from the Moscow regional election when Navalny almost became a mayor of Moscow.
This is the fact. I think that because, of course, those elections were false, probably he actually received the biggest amount of votes. But
we'll never know.
We'll never know, of course.
But Russian archives are very good, usually. There is everything.
Well, in 50 years, we might be able to open them up and open the papers. But he was at least energetic enough to go to run this, to try to.
Maybe Putin wanted some experiment. As I told you at the beginning, Navalny wasn't from the family of those Moscow liberals or Jewish Moscow liberals, like sometimes Putin mentions them because he's anti-Semite. Usually people don't know about this, especially from the Western left. And he was a man from the system. It's to understand Navalny and his role, it's like understand Solidarity in 1980. Because Polish communism was crushed not by the Kursk soldiers or immigrants from London, but by the workers who were part of the communist system. And Navalny, as a person who knew the Putinist system, knew also why the system is sometimes very weak. And he knew how to expose all bad values of that system to us. And also, as you mentioned at the beginning, the revolution came. YouTube, Telegram channels, social medias. Now we don't need to have a television, antennas, and special centers to make content. All those things made Navalny very, very dangerous. And also, the fourth thing, also mentioned by you and me, popularity. West needs someone who will mentally replace Putin in their minds. Potential successor, symbol of new Russia, symbol that Russia is still in game and will be better one day. That's how many Western politicians and media journalists, commentators thought about Mikhail Gorbachev in the second half of the 80s during Perestroika. That was the way they were thinking about Yeltsin. And also, let us remember about Putin at the beginning.
Exactly. So
and
we thought
Navalny
it's time of
became that
change.
symbol. And to finish a little bit this part, because I'm talking a little bit too much, you started from the movie Navalny. Navalny was also a man who knew how to talk with the West without help of the specialists from KGB. There is this end of the movie, the Oscar-winning movie, documentary about him, what he watched on his iPad, Rick and Morty. He was a man who knew how to talk, how to negotiate with the West, how to use cultural symbols. And all of this must end with the decision that we have to eliminate this person from the living world.
And the first decision came in 20 of September 2020 when he was flying from Tomsk to Moscow, and he was poisoned at this moment. And I think that probably he would actually die if not two things. A decision of a pilot to stop, to land. And secondly, the intervention of Angela Merkel at this moment.
And other Western politicians.
Because Western politicians, they sort of decide, okay, we will take him to Germany. And if they didn't take him and bring him, of course, he was also young and he survived the Novichok. Maybe it was...
He was 44, a young, sportive man.
Yeah, so those maybe was not like good enough given to him at this point, but maybe the German doctors were specialized in this and they helped him out. But what I personally cannot understand, that Navalny knew Russia. He was not an American romanticizing Russia. He was not. He knew what the Russian methods are. He knew the system from within. But maybe either his fact that why did he come back? Why?
Firstly, I will respond for a question very soon, but you mentioned Tomsk. Because became also there was also a fifth factor. Navalny was a Moscow guy. And that's how Putin wanted to describe him for the public opinion at the beginning. He's one of those people from Moscow.
Elite.
Who knows nothing about the rest of Russia, about Gubinka. It was maybe a truth at the beginning, I remember when I first time saw Navalny.
Yeah.
It was Moscow. 2013, I was there together. It was exactly the beginning of Maidan, and we were in Moscow. Me, Polish and German journalists, because it was reconciliation travel of the Polish and German journalists to Moscow. There was Piotr Semka and Bartosz Wieliński together with me from Poland. Now it's probably impossible.
They would kill each other in one bath.
They were very good friends there and very intelligent guys. Because it was founded by German money, we visited many good and not very cheap restaurants in Moscow. And in one of them, I first time seen him. Later, I had more opportunities thanks to his visit to Poland and other places. But he was sitting in the corner of the restaurant with Ksenia Sobczak, daughter of the mentor of Vladimir Putin, and they were eating. They ate very big Argentinian steaks for many rubles, and they were elegant. You saw liberal Moscow in its prime.
Something which a ordinary Russian person would never be able to afford or never would like to.
Yes, he had a lot of money. He was a member of Gazprom Council, but he knew, and that is why it was because of the same issues like supporting annexion of Crimea. He knew that he had to be for the ordinary Russians and understand them, and he was traveling to many Russian cities of this big country. Thanks to the planes, because in Russia they don't have network of the autobahns like in the Western Europe, and that is why he was in Tomsk. He was working with the people, and also it was very dangerous for the Putin. Yes, probably Navalny would be a hero in the last 4 years and lying somewhere in the cemetery in Moscow for many years now. But it was 2 years before war, and Putin wasn't able to refuse invitation of Angela Merkel to save him. But why he come back to Russia?
Exactly, he came out of the hands of.
Because he wanted to be in Russia. Because of two things. Firstly, he wanted to be a Russian politician and be with his nation. Nobody wins in Russia and taking power in Russia being outside of Russia. Even Vladimir Ilyich Lenin was back in Russia for a few months when he was taking power during the October Revolution. You have to be in Russia, be with the nation, or at least with some powers who are doing that. And he knew that if you want to change Russia, survive Putin, he didn't, sadly, and maybe become one of the most important people in New Russia, you have to be there. Secondly, maybe he was thinking, Yulia Navalny and his family knows more about this. Maybe he was thinking that I'm too popular. I'm the man from the documentary.
That's true.
It was documentary was made as a part of his coming back.
And he had a huge support with the people. There were crowds waiting for him.
Also, he had something which is very important for the political prisoners. People in the West knew who he is. He was the most recognizable, next to Vladimir Putin, of course, Russian person in the world. He thought that he will be in the minds of Angela Merkel, who was a leader. Trump was a leader at the time. Joe Biden, and other leaders of the Western world. It was usually helpful because, except Stalin purges, Russian and Soviet leaders usually were very careful with killing someone who was popular in the West. But in the meantime, Russia made aggression, attacked Ukraine, and everything changed. Now Putin care no more about the public opinion of every Western country. Now Putin cares no more about life. Now Putin cares no more about the way people think in the West about him.
It's true, there now comes the brutality. This is Common Sense Generation. If you like this channel, please subscribe, share, and comment. Your voice really matters. Right now, we are in the moment when Russia is closer, it's more close to the Western world than it was ever before since the Soviet times, when there are no more
Brezhnev, Khrushchev care more about Western public opinion than Putin.
Putin closed this country and the society so deeply, but also they are in fear, Russian society. They are afraid of their lives because even elderly are right now put into prison after what they write on social media. Mm-hmm. So it becomes dangerous for ordinary Russians. I had a pleasure of having a vacation on Bali a few months ago, and I met so many Russian people who left after the aggression of Ukraine, who were, of course, speaking Russian, but who were saying they are from Bali. So I was, of
But
course,
they were usually blonde and with a white skin, you know.
yeah, with speaking Russian, but well, I sort of tried to believe them. But the fact is that the society is live in fear. But now the death of Navalny and the huge crowd of people supporting him, but also the fact that his wife, well, she's desperate. She lost her. I think she doesn't care about her life anymore, but she cares about the legacy of her husband, and she becomes the first lady of the opposition.
But remember, she's safe. Thanks God she's safe because she's in the West. There was also, we have to mention them, those two great women here. Those very, for me, I'm a son, I've got a mother. There was a very deeply moving picture of two women, Navalny's mother and Navalny's mother-in-law, mother of Yulia, sitting as a presiding members of the family at the ceremony of his funeral. Even Putin, I think, is not able to make any persecutions of the mothers.
This is one thing what Putin is afraid of.
Yeah, but, you know, he almost broke a Russian taboo of funeral. Russian Orthodox Church, we have to mention this. We know that Moscow Patriarchate and Russian Orthodox Church is not very, is not a power of opposition.
Definitely not.
It definitely is not, especially Patriarch Kirill. But the letter signed by the Orthodox priest Vladimir Putin about the funeral of Navalny, comparing him with Pontius Pilatus, who was able to organize quick a funeral for Jesus, was one of the most important moments in the Russian history, because Putin cannot break voluntarily in the way he wants Russian taboos. And the funeral, you can kill your enemy in Russia, but he has a right to the funeral and the right burial. Yeah, it's very similar, by the way, between us. When we look, when some people in Ukraine who don't understand our thinking about the proper burial of the people in the Volyn. That's a people sometimes don't understand that symbols. But also that's a proof for us that there is something in the Russian spirit still connected with the spirituality. I mean, people still think about this. The Orthodox Church is not only a power of the politics, but also it is a church. We'll see. Yulia Navalny is like her husband. She's young, energetic. She was also not from the family of the oppositionists. He's well educated. He was a good companion of his life, and he was probably also a very good companion of her life. They're a very good marriage. Probably we talk about Navalny and his way back to Russia, the last moment for them, the ultimate moment of their marriage, because they had no more time for themselves in the next 4 years. But it's not like with Svetlana Tikhanovska or many other wives of the killed husbands, like Corazon Aquino, that she's automatically become a leader of the Russian opposition. Firstly, I don't think she will be back in Russia. To be a leader of the opposition, you should be there. I think her mother and her mother-in-law will not let her do this. He's dead. He's in grave. There is no need to be back
and
in
there
Russia.
Are 2 children left.
Yeah, and she also will be a very good ambassador of the cause of the freedom of Russians. It's great that Joe Biden decided to meet with her and talk with her, that European Parliament let her a place, and the ministers, among them our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Radosław Sikorski, were able to talk with her. And Yulia will be an ambassador, and of course she would be dealing with the personal loss and with personal grief.
And I think she wanted to sort of reshape this grief
into something.
In something to the political power. And looking at Russia, we all want, I think that the only way of resolving many problems of the world right now is to let the Russian society change.
If you lose someone, I will paraphrase a little bit a quotation from Abraham Joshua Heschel, Jewish theologist. And he said that when you lose something, you can be angry on this, you can cry, and there is a third way. Start to sing a song, make a song, do something with this loss. And it's not only an obligation of Yulia Navalny, it's obligation of us, the world, to do something with the death of Alexei Navalny. To find out the way to make Russia again a member of the international family. Because that's very sad, and that's what I have to tell to some my Polish and Ukrainian friends. There will be Russia. Even if I hope Ukraine will win war with this country, there will be a Russia. We have to deal with Russia, work with Russia, and have better Russia next to our borders.
And this is a wonderful punchline of this episode. This was Łukasz Jasina in Common Sense Generation. And to all of you, the viewers, I do hope you like this conversation. And I do hope you will also take this message and write down your comments, share it, and think what you think about the death of Alexei Navalny. And I also want to thank the Polish National Foundation for making this video podcast possible. This is Common Sense Generation. Common Sense Generation.